Hi everybody, welcome to week 3. I just wanted to touch base for a few minutes and kind of cover this week's agenda. We're going to look at the software development lifecycle, or SDLC, and essentially that's the process that we go through to create software applications, database applications, design databases, come up with user requirements, kind of the soup to nuts from the time that somebody says we're going to do something software till the time that we implement and deploy something for users that we then have to maintain. And so essentially you can think of the software development lifecycle, or SDLC, as kind of the requirements process. Let's figure out what people need, and then let's design a solution. So design is step 2. And after we design, then we can start coding. We can create our database tables, we can create our program code, we can kind of put all this together. And once we do that, then obviously we need to test it. And when everything works, and this might be an iterative process because we test it, doesn't work, or we test it and it didn't quite meet the user requirements, or we bring the user in to see it and they say we also needed something else, then we'll actually go back and kind of start over. And then once we finally deploy it and we say we have a solution for you, then we start to maintain it. And interestingly enough, even though we put all this time into gathering requirements and designing and coding and testing and recoding and testing and recoding and testing, the maintenance phase becomes our most expensive phase because it's the one that lasts the longest. So a lot of times we'll talk about the software development lifecycle. So there's two terms you'll hear. You'll hear waterfall. And waterfall is a methodology, an approach to how we go about doing this in software development lifecycle. And it's so called because requirements, once they're done, flow into design. Once it's done, that flows into implementation, which once it's done flows into testing, which once it's done flows into maintenance kind of thing. So a lot of times we'll use the two terms synonymously, and that's fine. And so you may wonder, why are we looking at software development lifecycle for a database course? And essentially we're going to go through the same process anytime we have a database application. We need to know the requirements. We need to then design database. We need to do our tables. We need to do our normalization. We need to consider what our indexes are and our keys are. So we're going to go through a process and we're going to implement all those things. And then finally we have to test them and eventually maintain them. And so as you're looking at the software development lifecycle this week, and in particular with respect to databases, I want you to consider and research and look up the Agile methodology. Again, methodology is just a 25-cent word for a process or a way to do something. And so Agile is an approach that a lot of developers use today to kind of streamline this process of requirements through implementation and deployment, which could be months, years, decades. And so I'm interested in your thoughts on how Agile might approach and apply to the database design process and your considerations. So think about Agile. Research Agile, go find some YouTube videos on Agile, and I will see you in the threads. Have a great week.